Hey, I'm Matt Reynolds, the founder of Stoke. I've always considered myself to be a really passionate person, passionate about my life and my job, calling, where I'm headed. And so this is why it was so odd for me when in the pandemic, truly probably early 2021, I found myself in a place I never expected to be. I was the pastor of a church for a long time, and I had gotten promoted, and now I was the executive director of a whole network of churches. So I was on paper doing really, really well, and everything was great. And I was able to help people and empower people to grow in all sorts of ways. But I just had this nagging feeling like something is off. I feel like I'm drifting from my calling, my purpose, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. For a long time, I thought, well, maybe it's just because of the pandemic and everybody's kind of struggling and everybody's asking these deeper questions. So let me not do anything too rash. So I just kind of kept thinking, kept asking myself these big questions, kept searching, kept reading things to try to kind of figure out what was going on. It was almost like I was having an early midlife crisis. And it came to a head when I vividly remember on a winter day, my wife, who was also working from home in her art studio, she called out to me and she said, "You know you're moaning, right?" And that really did stop me in my tracks. I did not know that I was shuffling aimlessly around the house and that I was vocally moaning and these deep sighs. You found yourself having those every once in a while. And you're like, man, what is that sigh about? And so I just felt lost. I feel like I didn't have the direction, the energy, the spark, the stoke that I was so used to living with. And I don't think the pandemic caused my crisis, but it definitely exacerbated it or magnified what was already there. So I was in such a bad state. My wife called one of my best friends that day and said, "Hey, you need to just come and walk with him." So I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I needed people to come visit me because I was in this like depressive kind of state, but I just was too tired to resist it anymore. So my friend came over that night. We went for a walk. And it was really at that point that I kind of had the courage, I guess, to say, I'm not happy. I'm not thriving. I'm not excited about anything like I usually am. And I just feel like I needed to admit it. Even admitting it made me feel embarrassed. I felt lack. I felt like, what's wrong with me? But it was at this point that I just knew I had to get kind of brutally honest. And something broke through that night when I just admitted I'm not happy. And I was kind of giving up. Like, I can't keep going about this the same way I'm going about it. So this sent me on a whole journey. And I created my company Stoked because I want to help people who are in a similar place to me. How do you get your fire back? How do you get that spark back, especially for like a high achieving leader or entrepreneur, business owner, someone who's used to living with vision and leading other people in vision? How do you reorient your life and reignite that inner fire if you found your place in this stuck place? So that's what this podcast is going to be about. We're going to dive into stories of transformation of leaders who have gone through their own stuck moments and come out on the other side of it with new purpose, new clarity, new energy, new vision. I think that's a huge thing that happens in our life when we go on the other side of this. So I'm going to be sitting down because everybody's story is different. The way you got there is different. The way you get out of it's different. So I hope you enjoy these conversations. And again, love to talk to you about your journey. So feel free to reach out. This is to spark a conversation. And I just have so much empathy for other leaders who've gone through this kind of stuff after going through it myself. But you don't have to stay there. We want to empathize with where we are in the journey, but we want to move forward. So this podcast is about these stories of transformation, going from stuck to stoked again, finding our purpose, clarity, and a renewed vision for life. So thanks for being here and enjoy the conversation. Okay. All right, so here we are. I'm Matt Reynolds, founder of Stoke, and sitting with some amazing recent clients and now friends, Monda, Tim Cibene.
Cibene.
Cibene. Oh my
Yes,
God.
it's okay.
Cibene.
It's okay. It's a weird last name.
I love it.
We're editing, right?
No, that's all. We're keeping it in there.
Oh, all right. We're rolling with it.
So I feel like I've explained a little bit about why I feel like what I was going through and why I created this, but I feel like I really wanted to dive into y'all's stories of why this met you at an important time and what kind of happened in your life going through the Stoke process. But first, just give us a little background on who you are, family, and tell us a little bit about your business, because my hunch is a lot of people listening to this will be an entrepreneur, be a business owner, and really relate on that level. So I'd love to hear a little background. So Connor, start with you.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Connor Monda. I just turned 30. Big mile marker for me.
Let's go.
I've got 2 little girls, 2.5 and 1-year-old. So life is pretty chaotic at home. My wife and I run our business together, which is crazy and awesome. I started a company called Man-Made Manufacturing right out of college, having no clue what I wanted to do. I just knew, hey, I wanted to be creative and I wanted to make things. And that kind of morphed into this business where we are a full service design and fabrication studio. Services kind of the live event entertainment industry, which means nothing to most people, but you've probably seen or interacted with our type of work before. So we've done everything from making a miniature Airstream for the Aflac duck to travel around in, to working with the guys on YouTube called Dude Perfect, making giant basketball goals. We're currently making like a oversized trophy for the Peach Bowl, things of that nature. Always different, always an exciting challenge. So about a year ago, moved the business from Athens, the business and my family from Athens to Atlanta. Got connected with you, Matt, kind of in the middle of that move. We've always kind of known of each other. I've known of you. And then some key people kind of linked us together. We started hooping together.
Yeah.
And I think the origin of me finding out about Stoke was like just standing around in between games and you like kind of telling somebody, yeah, this is what I'm passionate about. This is kind of what I'm going after. I'm looking for these kind of people who are feeling burnt out and, kind of lost the fire, who consider themselves passionate people. And I was like, whoa, that's me. So I think I like pulled you aside and was like, hey, I'd love to hear more about what you're talking about because I think I check every box, and we'll get into that story later.
Yeah, that's a great.
Yeah, so that's how we got connected, and now we're here.
Yeah. All right, so Tim, what about you, man? Give us the
cool.
deets.
Yeah, so I'm Tim Cibene. I have a creative agency called Maniac. We are a special ops team that help clients with their turnkey marketing needs. So a lot of our clients come to us and they're tired, similar to how some people come to Matt, in need of a refresh. So a lot of times we help them boil down their messaging, figure out exactly what they're trying to say, what they're trying to sell, the problems they're trying to solve. And then we move into a phase where we help them with their visual identity. So we'll establish a brand for them and a whole system for that. And then we typically help those clients with their website refresh as well, which usually also plays into some sort of media, which is most of the time a brand film and photo video. So we're a small team, but we are we call ourselves special ops. We're all senior level people, and so we help a variety of different clients with different needs. And then a little bit about me. I am married to Lauren, who is a upcoming published author, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
So I get to enjoy this season of life, seeing her just like flourish, and that's really awesome. We have a awesome Labradoodle named Linus. We live in Woodstock. We are travel enthusiasts, so been to a lot of places all over the world. We said that we would never plant roots anywhere. Found Woodstock, Georgia, and just bought a house because we were like, this place is really awesome. I come from a big Italian family. I think there's 22 of us when we all get together, which is the last name Cibene, pronounced Cibene, but I don't ever say it that way. I say Cibene.
It's pronounced how?
I mean, it's technically pronounced Cibene, which is,
okay.
yeah, that's the Italian pronunciation. That's how my dad would tell it.
Okay.
But for me, I just say Cibene. I think other things about me. I love playing video games. I think my passion ultimately, when it boils down to it, is I'm a people activator. I see talented people, and then I just want to be kind of second in command. I like to take their ideas and integrate them, help them go from idea to function.
It's great.
Hey, you've got a type, Matt. Italian Americans with wives named Lauren.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That is good. I love it. Yes, new connections. All right, so y'all both had a business. You're working in the business. The business is happening. It's being realized. Like Tim, I remember one of the things you said was like, man, I've started all these businesses, like, and this one finally worked. You know, and you're like, I'm making more money than ever, and I love what I'm doing, and you know, this was the dream. Like, you were pursuing the dream. You're like, can I work with these clients? Can I work on these projects, Connor? Like, I remember you telling me kind of your story. It's like, man, you kind of achieved the dream, but then there was some, you know, breaking point or some, you know, exhaustion level or some inner feeling of like, man, something's off, something's not right. So I wanted to ask y'all both that question. Like, what was that breaking point for you where you're like, I need something in my life, some refreshment, some clarity, some understanding? So maybe we'll start with you, Connor. What was that?
Sure.
What was that breaking point for you?
Man, so like I said, moved business and my family to Atlanta about a year ago. Huge leap of faith. You know, it required rehiring of a brand new team, moving to a bigger space, ultimately like tripling our overhead very quickly, overnight, basically. And I tell the story of like, man, we needed I'm not kidding, we needed about like 30 different things to not just go right, but to go perfect. And we had been trying to move to Atlanta like 2 or 3 times, and the timing just never was right. Like, it just never worked out. And all of a sudden somebody offered us, just put an offer in on our house that wasn't on the market. We just had a realtor friend who was like, hey, I got some people that are interested in your house. And, you know, we just kind of took it as a sign. And Lauren, my wife, and I are just kind of, you know, our friends give us a hard time because we just send things. We're just like, all right, if it checks out, if it feels right, you know, if our souls are aligning with it, we're like,
life's too
we're
short
doing
not to
it.
go
Yeah,
for
we're
it.
gonna send it.
Yeah.
And this was one of those moments. At the time, Lauren was pregnant with our second daughter, so we went through like an insane transition period. It was like 6 months of, you know, having to find a new house in Atlanta, having to find a new warehouse in Atlanta, having to find a brand new team. At the same time, we were juggling trying to land the biggest contract in the history of our company, in which, you know, this move was kind of riding on the success of that contract.
Can you say how big that was? Like, are you like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a couple $1,000s short of being a 7-figure contract. So, for us, that was like almost seed money to do what we needed to do to move. And, you know, those conversations had started 6 months earlier. They were supposed to be done 3 months prior to our move, and they were just dragging out. You know, it's not a small sum of money. So, we were just like, we feel like this is what's supposed to happen. And took all these leaps of faith, right? And the contract went through, and it was great. Kind of got to February when the contract had ended. Financially, we're in the best place we've ever been. Have an incredible team, staffed, you know, you know, doing super fun work. And I was in the worst place I think I've been with the business. This is where kind of working with your spouse, I think, is really good, because I was at a place where I was ready to pull the plug and say, I want to blow this thing up and like take the money and run and, you know, bide my time and figure out something else. And Lauren really was a huge proponent of, hey, you've worked incredibly hard and we've worked incredibly hard to get this to this place. And now it's actually working, you know, like for 7 years we've been hustling and it's been kind of working, but now it's like really working and now you want to run. Maybe you need some space. And that was kind of when I was starting to get into that place is when we started connecting. I started to hear more about Stoke, and I was like, man, I need this. Like, I need somebody to give me some space.
What were you feeling inside? Like, I know how I would saw you and would describe it, but I'm curious how you would describe
I felt
that,
trapped.
like, in a reality.
Like, legitimately, I felt trapped by this thing that I created, by the success of this thing that I created. I felt like my everyday was, I wasn't enjoying my work anymore, and didn't really understand why at the time. And then I felt like I have to stay tethered to this because my family's all in on this, right?
Yeah.
We've pushed all the chips on the table. Our entire income comes from the success of this company. And it's working, so it's silly to walk away from. But I can't envision a world in which I continue to operate like this for the next 40 years for the sake of this. Like, I know that I was made for something, what felt like I was made for something greater than kind of this moment or what I'm feeling. And I just felt lost, man. I felt like I need some help to get some perspective and understanding around how do I get through, how do I push through this? And so when we crossed paths, man, I was like very much, you just felt like a cool drink of water. Like, you heard me, you saw me. I could immediately tell, like, you've been through some of the things that I was feeling. You've like waded through the depths. You've known the feeling of, I got everything I ever wanted and I'm not happy with it. And how isolating and lonely that feeling is. And so, yeah, we just hit it off, man. And I think we committed to, I took you helped push me to commit to a 3-week sabbatical where I, turned work completely off, which was the first time in 7 years since I started the business that I ever did that. Like, no work email, no conversations at home about work. Lauren, to her credit, took an enormous amount of responsibility, basically was doing her job and my job at the same time so that I could breathe and have space. And you were kind of my shaman, my guide for those 3 weeks. And I think what was crucial was having a plan, right? Like, I was nervous about, all right, I'm just going to take 3 weeks off and I'm not going to work, but what am I going to do at that time? And one of the things that I was so grateful for was your foresight and being like, all right, we're going to take time off, and that's obviously necessary. But, like, how are you using that time? Let's lay it out. Let's not just imaginarily talk about it. And so we kind of broke it up into 3 1-week sections, and that ultimately was kind of like this exactly what I needed for the season. We can dig into all the details a bit later, but came out of it with a fresh, renewed sense of vision and purpose and perspective. And ultimately, the one thing that the most important thing that I got was a new perspective. And that changed everything. And I'm super grateful for it.
Don't tell us it yet, because
okay.
we gotta leave some suspense.
For sure.
Because my when we were talking and first interacting, and you were even saying it, like, man, I feel like I've got a successful business, but I feel like I'm like dying at the soul level.
Yes.
Like, I can't keep doing this. It was like soul crushing, even, which is so disorienting to be like, I got what I wanted.
Yeah.
I've accomplished the dream, but why does it feel like my soul is kind of dying?
Mm-hmm.
That is a very disorienting place to be. But I think some people might resonate with that. And then it's like, but it's weird to articulate that, or, well, why is that? It's just kind of a confusing thing to go through. So let's put a little pin in that real quick. And then, Tim, you had a similar journey, but different. But how would you describe, like, your breaking point or your kind of moment of going, like, man, the pain or the disconnect is to such a degree I'm willing to, like, reach out and, like, look for a solution and put some time and energy into exploring this.
Yeah, so if you rewind a little bit, we started our business in 2021. I think a lot of people had the same reckoning we had when the pandemic had started. It was a thought of like, okay, what are we spending our lives doing? We're kind of having that moment of like realizing life is short. This is kind of like everyone's at home. I mean, this was really during 2020. At that point, I think myself and Lauren and Joe, my business partner, were like, okay, we've always talked about doing something together. Let's finally like take the leap of faith and do it, which was one of the scariest decisions we've ever made. We've left comfort, basically. Like we all three had very stable, very good jobs. But we knew that it was time for the next leg up, the next bull run of our lives, if you will. So we started Maniac. That was 2021. And the first 3 years were incredible. I mean, it was just like, I mean, if everyone can remember 2021, it just felt like it was printing money. You know, It's just like when it was feast, it was feasting. It was like so much. I mean, we were looking at hiring a bunch of people. Like we were like, wow, this thing's growing really quickly. And like you said, we had started like a dozen LLCs before then. And just, it's like, you know, that analogy of throwing spaghetti at the wall, just seeing like what actually sticks. And Maniac was the first thing that really stuck. And honestly, that makes a lot of sense for who we are, because that was so much of our passion, was marketing, was storytelling, was helping a lot of our clients figure out their messaging and taking their product to market and putting their best foot forward with like the best material we could create for them. So fast forward 2023, business is doing awesome. Similar to Connor, we landed our biggest project, which actually you can see now is on the Beltline. It's a multifamily housing project. So if you ever walk past Citizen, that was us. We got to
Citizen. What's it called?
It's just called Citizen.
Citizen.
Yeah, it's a multifamily housing development that we did with Columbia Ventures, really awesome client. So we got to work with them. We named the building. We did the signage, the visual ID. We did all their web, photo, video, everything for that project. It was like a client that truly trusted us, and that was kind of a peak moment for our business, because we had worked super hard to win that project. And we're a small team. Like I think that can sometimes deter clients from moving forward with us. But I mean, we pitch ourselves as that senior level. So they trusted us. We pulled off that project. That was kind of the pinnacle. Things were going great. On a personal note, 2023 was awesome for my wife and I. We moved into our fitness and wellness journey. I lost 85 pounds in a year.
Wow.
Yes, I looked a lot different back then.
That's amazing.
Thanks. And I mean, even Lauren, she lost 45 pounds, and we just felt the best that we've ever felt. Obviously, I mean, I was 33 and just full of vitality. And then we entered in 2024, and on like a more personal note, we just kind of hit some roadblocks. In a personal sense, we had a miscarriage, which was like a difficult entry to the new year, but still kind of riding off of the highs of 2023. We're like, all right, things are going to be great. And then moving into some personal health issues too. I developed, like all these sinus issues. I won't go into details, but basically lost my smell and taste for like a year. It was rough. And then, so all of these things were kind of making my psyche a little wobbly, I guess you could say. Like things were, and we're trying to continue to build Maniac. And I think, for a lot of folks in our industry, this year has been more of an uphill battle. 2024 has not been like printing money. It's the work has been harder to get. So all of these kind of are coming together. There's, again, almost like this pattern of like a reckoning. It's almost like every 4 years, I feel like, because another one happened in 2016. These things happen where I don't know, I'd like to see patterns. But this year came around and I started listening to the podcast that you and Drew and what's the other?
Burchak.
Burchak. Yeah, you guys started a podcast. What No One's Asking For. I think you renamed it now, Own Your Greatness.
We changed it back.
Oh, really? Did you? That's
yeah, because Own Your Greatness is like the course.
Yeah, okay.
Like a men's course. But then, we're like, man, we need to go back.
Yeah, and then to go back a little further, Matt is, I got to see Matt in the Midtown days when he was a pastor there. And so kind of had some context of Matt and like the kind of energy that he would stoke even in us when we were first married and living in Atlanta. And so with all the stuff that was kind of hitting in 2024, I started really resonating with the podcast that was coming out. One of the episodes was talking about midlife sadness. And I mean, I was only 33. I just turned 34 on Sunday, but I was 33 and I was like, I do feel this. I feel so sad. Like, I just feel like I've built what I've wanted to build. It's the business that works. We have this awesome lifestyle. Like, we live in an awesome town. We have such a really, like, everything on paper is like, I feel wonderful, but there was just something missing inside of me. I don't know what it was. I was like, I just feel empty and I can't explain it. And so ended up reaching out to you because I had, been recommended, and also just kind of see, like, even remembering the Midtown days and just kind of the way you used to stoke our spirit. I think it was a no-brainer that I was like, okay, I got to check this out and see what this is all about. And so, yeah, we got connected and kicked off our journey together, which took us internationally in a 90-day window.
Well, so let me say this real quick, because this is something I've recognized, because I walked with both of you guys in like this 3-month kind of intensive journey. And I feel like there is something about like that, like leadership intensive time that I kind of jive with, and what I've realized is I think everybody needs a different experience to like reset the system. So Connor's experience was like, man, I just been working in this business nonstop. I've like never had a break. And that just became apparent pretty quick. Like, what about some space? It's like, well, how would we do that? What would that look like? Like, I remember talking to Lauren, your wife, like I'm like advocating, like, I think this needs to happen, which was going to make it harder for her. So that was like the radical step for Connor, which some people listening to this might be like, I've never taken a break. And that might be like this radical idea. But talking to you, Tim, it was different, and I want you to talk a little bit about that, because it was like the second time we met. You were talking about travel and this international kind of stuff, and I'm saying that now because I've looked back, and I really do believe there has to be some disruptive thing that happens. And then I think in the midst of that, there is a paradigm shift. There is a perspective change that comes out of it. But I think that thing might be different for everybody. So that's why I like the difference is. So yeah, take us to that moment where, you're talking about international travel, and then I pitch you on an idea.
Yeah, I think so much of what we uncovered together was that I had disconnected myself as a human from who Tim is or was. So much of it is like the last 3 years I've just been building my business and been heads down in survival mode, trying to build systems, process, operations, trying to bring in clients, trying to build a team. There's all these things. You kind of sell your soul for a while to your business so that you can make it work. It's like you're nesting and making that happen. Well, part of that was like I had completely lost touch with who I was. And I think that was really what I discovered with you. And that's where the Stoke happened, because I am naturally a very passionate person. I am excitable. I love to be with people with the same energy. I love to bring that energy. And so, yeah, our second session, I was just telling you so much about like travel, and I've just not left the US since COVID. And like, I don't know, like, maybe I need to travel again. And you're like, well, there is this trip of coming up with a group of leaders. We're going to Mexico City for 4 days. And I was like, well, what are we doing? And you were like, well, it's just kind of show up, man. It's like flow. Like, you're just going to see what happens. And I was like,
classic,
which is just not me at all. I am like, you can ask my friends. They have so many nicknames for me. I think I can't remember the most. Oh, Nicole is the recent one. I guess, like, you've got like the Chads, the Karens. I think a Nicole is somebody who is just like your super organized friend who's like, oh, I've already made 4 reservations. Which restaurant do you want? That's me. I am that person. So when you're like, let's just go to Mexico, and then you're just gonna see what happens, I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. Like, I need to know, where am I staying? I think I even asked that in the WhatsApp group. Where are we staying, by the way? Because I need to tell my wife.
Like 2 days before.
You're 2 days before. Like,
where are we staying?
Where are we, what's happening? Who's picking me up from the airport? Like, it was just so not me. But we went to Mexico City, and yeah, something really spiritual happened there. I reconnected with myself in that moment. I was like, there were several moments where I just was like quietly tearing up in the car. I just like driving through downtown Mexico City, being connected with other humans across the world. And so much of my background is travel, and just gaining that perspective of being outside of like my home, my zone. I just kind of become numb being home. And then so being able to get on an airplane and go somewhere else, and then just like get to experience a different culture, food, people, their injustices, listening to like the things that they're having to deal with, just it totally reconnected my soul back to who I am. And so that was a huge soak moment. And through that led to kind of a flow session where I was still kind of figuring out, like, I'm at this threshold moment in 2024. It's like, I know I'm in this threshold moment. I know like the next thing's on the tip of my tongue. I'm like on this precipice, like, what is it? And you and I were just doing our walk and talk in downtown Mexico City. It was like 7 a.m. because of the time change. So we were just walking. We just had breakfast. And it was that moment you had said some stuff that just clicked in my brain, and I was like, I gotta go. So I like went to a cafe and spent like 2 hours just typing out these ideas of things I want to go do with my life. All with Maniac, but like other avenues, other things I want to do, because I'm young still. I still have other dreams and passions and things like that. And so, yeah, that's
something got activated in you in that morning walk, and then you went and just got that download. And that was amazing to see. So we only have a couple minutes left, so I'm just gonna ask y'all a couple questions. So like, what would you say the paradigm shift was for you,
Sure.
Connor?
Yeah, for me, getting to the end of kind of my 3 weeks, like, and I needed 3 weeks to get to it, but it was just this realization that this thing that I'd built and that so many people have, contributed to in a lot of these ways, it was checking almost every single box that I needed it to check. It was financially providing for my family. It was giving me the freedom to drop my girls off at school, pick them up, like if an emergency happened, I can just go and deal with it. But for me, having to get to the core of, I started this business because I just wanted to make cool stuff with my friends. And now I have a successful business and I'm not making cool stuff with my friends. And I was like bitter about that. And I didn't realize it. I just needed some space to say, hey, this isn't worth blowing up. Like, actually, if you had this in the inverse where you were just making cool things with your friends, but you weren't financially stable, you didn't have the freedom of time, to be with your family, like, you would be a lot more miserable than you are now. Like, this is actually a much easier fix because it's like I had to start to change my relationship to my job and view it more of, this is a job. And certainly I care about it way more than just a job because it's this thing that I've started. But if I need to get a creative itch and it's not coming from work, I need to scratch that creative itch and it's not coming from this thing that I've built, that's okay.
Right.
But it's not okay to not start exploring other ways to do that. So that was like a huge paradigm shift for me of like, oh, I don't need to blow this thing up to go try to build something else that where I hope that my work is creatively, always scratching that itch. But for me, I'm just like a problem solver. Like it's creativity to me is like just unlocking a puzzle. I love being the one who's thrown into a problem and like getting to the essence of it and flipping it on its head. And for the first part of my business, we're making real things. So I didn't know how to do any of it. I didn't know how to weld. I didn't know any of that. And so that was part of the challenge. And then once we kind of like mastered that, and I'd hired fabricators who were just super talented, and we got to this place where anything that came in the door, I was like, yeah, we can make it. I don't name something, we'll make it. Like I promise.
Yeah.
The challenge kind of went away, and I needed that friction. I needed that challenge. And so understanding that about myself, understanding that my job doesn't scratch that itch anymore in that way, and that's okay. And then challenging myself to start exploring that in other ways. So I've started like a thing with one of my best friends. It's like an art project that we're going to be doing together called Intentionally Impractical, which is just this super fun. He's a brilliant creative. And we both are used to like dealing with briefs or dealing with, hey, this needs to fit in this box and it has to work for all of these reasons. And so we have this like playful outlet now of like, well, what if we just made absurd things for the sake of it, like intentionally being impractical? What if there's a story involved in it? So, like we're working on like an iPhone case that's like made out of like, it's like a 4-inch stainless steel block that'll be a bookend, but you can't use your phone while you've got it in a bookend. Or I got this idea for a luxury handbag that's actually a cinder block, like just ridiculous things that like one day we're going to put together and kind of have a show. But it's this release for me that, hey, we can jump on a call or we can meet, and for an hour, for 2, I get to be creative without somebody, putting these like, when you deal with corporations like we do often, and brand identities, and having to have lots of people have insight. You start with a really fun idea, and by the time it gets through budgets and legal and all the things, you end up just kind of creating some vanilla work. At times it gets soul crushing after some time of like, man, we always start at this beautiful place that sounds so cool, and a lot of times, you know, you end in this place where you're just like, well, we did it. We did something, and it's kind of cool, but it's not what it could have been had we had a bit more buy-in or a bit more risk. And that's, you know, that's the nature of doing creative work at a corporate scale. But so yeah, for me, the paradigm shift came down to, hey, I need to see this for what it is, and it is my job at some level, and that's okay. And I don't need it to be more than it is, as long as I'm conscious of it, and I need to go out and find other ways to scratch the creative itch, which is super important to me. Yeah. But that's also led to a whole, you know, we're in the middle of a whole rebrand, like changing our name, the whole thing. Shout out to Matchstick, brand identity house here in Atlanta, who's working on our rebrand. But super excited about that. And I wouldn't have gotten to that place had I not been able to first have a change in perspective and say, okay, this is what this is. If this really is where I want to go or where we want to go, then a lot of things have to change, and I have to have the courage to make it happen. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, and I think a lot of people identify with that, where they build something and then the thing they built feels like now it like owns them. Yeah. You know, or they're trapped in it, or their identity's so tied to it. It's like, I want to just get away from it. I want to escape it. It's kind of a burden to me. It's all it needs me. And like, I felt that. And I moved on from something, and I still think it was probably the right decision, but I have looked back and said, God, did I just jump ship? Sure. Like, did I move on too quick? Like, because you're in this pressure cooker and you just want that pressure to go away. So I do think that's a place that a lot of people find themselves in, and they're like, I'm living in the life I wanted to create. Like, I actually am in it, but now I feel trapped in it. And that's like a really like hopeless kind of feeling. So I think a lot of people can identify with that, and I feel like your story provides like hope, you know, like it's not the end. It's not always going to feel this way. Tim, what about for you? Like, what was the paradigm shift that happened in you?
I mean, it was a couple of things. I mean, like I said, I think I approached you knowing that there was like a threshold that I was ready to pass through, and I wasn't sure what it was yet. So I think connecting with you helped me kind of reconnect back with the pre-pandemic Tim, the one who was more in tune with himself, connected himself, had not basically sold himself to his business to try to make it work, which has been awesome. I mean, reconnecting with myself, being able to travel again. You know, I'd kind of describe you as like the alchemist, because that was one of the books you had recommended. Like kind of going through, I mean, that whole story is like going through the different threshold moments, you know, staying present in certain areas while you're kind of figuring things out, moving on to the next thing. And for me, I mean, it's similar to Connor. It's like Maniac is this incredible business that we've built that helps support me and propels me to do other things that I enjoy as well, things that I want to do down the road. I want to continue to build Maniac, but knowing that exactly that, it's like I'm not a slave to this business, but I can continue to build it and allow other people to benefit from it as well, while also being able to go and do other things. So spending time with you, I think, was like the paradigm shift was just realizing some of that, reconnecting with myself. And then, like I said, just figuring out what was that threshold moment for me. And that's what happened in Mexico City was that flow session where I just went to a cafe, put headphones on for 2 hours, and then it just like kind of came out of me, these ideas that I want to pursue. So yeah, I mean, I think all of that would not have happened had I not connected with you. I mean, had I not left, I mean, I would have not had this spontaneous trip to Mexico City that would have just been unplanned. I mean, I got to turn my brain off in ways and just kind of enjoy the flow of that trip. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I mean, just for people who are like, well, what is this Stoke process? Like, I think the core of it is this looking at your story, you know, like, who are you? Your story's your superpower. Like, what's going on in your story? Even the pain. Where's the pain? Like, where's the struggle? Like, that might be your secret sauce. And then it's looking at what energizes you, you know, what energizes you, what de-energizes you, how much time are you spending in those places? Who energizes you? Are you around those people? Like, names of actual people, you know, but also the kinds of people that really get you stirred. And then what's play, what's fun, you know, look like in your life. So that's kind of the core. There's like this assessment process, and then it's saying, okay, what would it look like to align my life to that more? Which to me, that's what flow is. People are like, what does it mean? Everyone kind of knows the feeling of flow. And I think you find it in a sport or in a relationship. It's like, what if your whole life could be flow? And it's an aligning what you're doing with your story and what energizes you in those passions. And so I think that's available for everybody. And that's kind of the core process. What would y'all say, just to close it down? Because I know we got to end here based on time, but like, what would you say to someone else? Like who would you say this is good for? Who would you say you need this Stoke process? You know, this would be good for you if you find yourself in this kind of place, and if you're this kind of person, like, you would recommend it for them.
I mean, I would say the threshold person, the one who knows there's something next, but they're not sure what it is, and they need a catalyst. They need the Stoke program to audit their life, to go through everything, and then kind of identify, boil it down to who they are, come up with their one word focus, like who they are as a person. It allows them, I think, to kind of go on to the next leg of their life, essentially the next few chapters of their life.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. No, now what I hear in that is like, what, like coming back to your identity, like you said, like who's Tim, you know? And I know you put on that playlist. What was that song by?
Gosh, what is it? Space Oddity by David Bowie.
David Bowie, yeah, ground controlled Major Tom.
Yeah.
And he was like, he's like, dude, I've just gotten further and further away. I've lost contact.
That song, yeah. So Major Tom is floating off into space, and they keep saying like, hey, come back. And he's like, but this is amazing. Like, check this out. Like, I'm in space. And they're like, yeah, but you're losing contact. And he's like, I know, but like, look at all this. It's like, I resonated with that. I felt like I had built like this business, and I'm like, yeah, this business, but like the ground controls, like the pre-business Tim is like, well, hey, don't forget who you are. Don't disconnect with your need for travel and your need to be connected with people and your need for community. Don't sell yourself. And it's just like, I'm kind of floating away. Obviously that song ends a little sadder, but
yeah,
that's not my story. Not today.
But I feel like it is, yeah, coming back to that sense of identity. Who am I? Like really owning that and being like, this is who I am. Like scars and all, this is who I am. And then your destiny flows out of that. Yeah. I think that's a core thing that we just need at probably multiple points in our lives. Yeah. What would you say, Connor? Who would you think this is good for?
Yeah, I think if you're somebody who has always been able to produce or push the limits or create, or you've always had a stoke about whatever it is, and that was kind of like your driver, and now you're in this place of success because of that push, because of that investment that you've given, but you're feeling lost, you're feeling like, man, I don't even have the passion for this anymore, whatever it may be. You know, that was me, right? My whole life I'd been somebody who's just known as somebody who's willing to like push the limits, to push themselves, to hustle, to get whatever they wanted. And then like I got it and was like miserable because I got it, you know? Yeah. That was part of the reason for me, was I was starting to feel lost in, okay, this is successful now. I don't have anything to chase. And that was because I was looking for validation. I was looking for catching it to answer all my, like, solve all my problems. And yeah, it comes back to identity, right? When your identity is wrapped up in that, in the success, in the it going well, in you performing well, and then you get it all and you still aren't happy with yourself, that's a dark place to be. So if you have hustled, if you have gotten everything you ever wanted and you're still unhappy, you know, I think this is for you. And I think it is a deeper journey. Like, this isn't necessarily just like business consulting. This is like life auditing, like you said, and it's vulnerable and really intense at times. But if you're like me, you need that. And so, yeah, the short answer is, man, if you are somebody who has gotten everything you wanted through hustle and luck and hard work and you're unhappy, this is for you.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting about both of y'all is like, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, like you do have a lot of agency. Like you can call the shots, and it's almost like you had a vision in your mind and you achieved the vision, and the vision's kind of like hemmed you in.
Yeah.
And that's why I like saying it's almost a redefinition of success. Like I need to re-look at like, what does success mean?
For sure.
And how do I get a new vision for that next phase of life and be okay to shape that, mold that. And I think that's why I'm drawn to working with people like y'all, business owners, entrepreneurs, because they have the agency, they have the vision and the drive, but they've gotten to a point where that's like kind of run out. Something's off. But it's like, if we can put those things back together and like recharge, refuel, get the perspective, reorient, the sky's the limit, you know, because you can have a renewed vision and see something happen. So I loved working with y'all, man. I felt energized by it. I feel blessed that, you know, we're friends. We're working on even other stuff now. So, man, I'm just looking for more people like y'all. And it's not just guys. I know there's plenty of women that are
for sure
in this place too, especially with how the workforce is going. And yeah, thanks for having the conversation. Thanks for taking a few minutes to share about your story. I know this is going to speak to someone. And for me, when I was going through this, there were only like 2 people. And when they articulated what they felt on the inside, I was like, this helps me know I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
Because I was like beating myself up like, my life is good.
Yeah.
Why am I not happy? Like, what's like, people would objectively be like, dude, what are you complaining about? You know? But it didn't mean inside something was off and it was hurting. And so that's my hope, is that as people hear you guys talk about your story, they'll be like, wow, that's me, you know,
For sure.
And gain some hope and perspective from this.
Well,
so
thanks for stoking the flame again.
Yeah.
let's go,
Thanks,
baby.
man.
Just
Bring it
getting
back to Stoke.
started. From a candle to a bonfire. Let's
That's
go.
Love it.
All right. That's a wrap.